Yeah, it feels slightly different with this longer run up. There's an opportunity to recover, certainly from the last game. There's an opportunity to allow guys just to get themselves in a slightly better physical condition if they've got any little problems that they've been carrying. Certainly some debriefing and some digging into the game that has that we've played in previously. I think also a period of time maybe to overanalyse as well when there are some simple facts that always jump out in any given game. And the simple one for me was that it was a very, very fine line between us and them in the last game. So a lot to look forward to. I think the guys are bright. They're mentally ready for this one, and certainly in a position where they want to put the record straight.
Thank you. Questions in the room? I'll start. So with tomorrow's game being win or go home, what is the importance of kind of keeping players' emotions during the match tomorrow?
I think the emotions of any game are vital, but you're right, this one in particular. I think there's a very fine line between being passionate and showing the right sort of what we would class as fighting spirit in this moment, and maybe just tipping over the edge and losing control and being reckless. And if you look around our group, I think the experiences of a lot of those guys, having been in this position before, there are a number of them that have played at international level. They've been under pressure. They realise the importance of any given situation. And the fact that we're back at home as well. I think that makes a big difference in these situations. Trying to ride the energy of the crowd, making sure that we do our part in that, and keeping them on the edge of their seat to give us that little extra push when we need it. Because I don't see there being an awful lot between the teams again tomorrow night. And we certainly want to be on the right side of that. So being in the right mental and physical place are vitally important.
Now with this being like tomorrow being the first home game being played, NGO, or home playoff game being played NGO, did that kind of add an extra energy for you and your team?
I don't think so. You may want to ask one or two of the guys that. I don't see that. The fellas have played a final against Miami in Leagues Cup. There would have been some serious emotions attached to that for all of us. That game in particular, I think, did an awful lot for the group's mentality, appreciation for those really pressurised moments. And if we look back on that performance, I think we'd all agree that it was not just a great spectacle, but it was a very, very good display from the team. And I think the crowd and group, and when I say group, I mean the team, together combined to make the evening a very passionate one, a very edgy game where we rode that line, where you got to be competitive, you got to show that the game is meaningful and that you're going to squeeze every ounce you can out of it. And that game in particular, I think, replicated probably what we're after tomorrow night.
Gary, it would probably be a better time to gather and kind of pinpoint all the stuff that's happening this season, because you're still pretty much in it. But at the same time, there's milestones this season that you already accomplished, like playing first games in Jolly's playoffs, which again, there's a lot of teams that haven't never even been close to that. So having said that, tomorrow, how important is that game in terms of what the crowd has to be on your side in order to push you guys over the edge?
Oh, I think they're absolutely vital, Claudio. I mean, I've watched a lot of the playoff games this year, as I'm sure everyone in this room has. And there's no doubt about it, that added home atmosphere and feel around the game makes a hell of a difference to the players. We experienced that in Orlando, and I actually came away from the game and said to the guys around me, you just wonder in the end that little extra percentage that is needed to win a game. And on the day, it was a very good strike that separated the two teams. But you do wonder on those days, the home advantage creates a bit of momentum and a feel within a game that you can only get at home because of the crowd. And I've already mentioned it to the players. We've got to do our bit. You know, our bit is to play with energy, is to play with the passion that I've already spoken about, that only a playoff game can probably inspire players to that sort of level. And if we can do that, I think we'll find that the crowd and the atmosphere that we can create might well be enough to tip us over the edge on this occasion. And I think if we can create not just an environment but a performance that sends us to a third game, it also offers the sort of, I think, confidence and momentum and, you know, all of the mental emotions that everyone wants when you win a game. And I think the team on the receiving end don't want, because now it's almost, well, we were there and on that razor's edge, we were in, and now we've got another game to go through. And anything can happen in that third game, we all know that.
In terms of what the feedback you might have received from the players in the locker room and practice right before this game, which is, well, the main game of the season so far, what have you felt in terms of what they tell you, the way they're facing and looking at tomorrow's game here?
Well, I think for sure, having been around this group for a long time now, obviously, I'm feeling a group of players that have no fear in the game they're going into. I don't think either of the two games that we played against Orlando in the last month or 5 weeks has there been at any point in time a concern about what they're walking into. I think there's a respect for what and how the opposing group are going to play. But if you look at both of those games in recent times, there's been such fine margins. You know, I know I've spoken about this in the press, and I've certainly spoken about it to the group. The first game was a dubious goal that they scored, still can't be given a clear, concise, it was or it wasn't offside. It's given, so it's factual. A penalty 100% after the event that I was told that wasn't given, which I find hard to believe, but nevertheless. So very, very fine lines in those games, just in terms of important moments, important decisions from officials that affect the game. Same can be said in Orlando. You know, 2 outstanding chances that we had, 1 cracker of a goal from them, and a very good chance in the opening exchanges. Fine lines. You know, my hope is, in this game alone, that we can show the sort of passion, I keep saying it because it's important, the sort of passion that's needed for the game and the moment. The sort of performance that I know we're very, very capable of at home. And we've seen on multiple occasions that, of course, not only worthy of winning a game, but the sort of picture that the fans want to see on this occasion. And an official that makes and gives and is able to see the big decisions in the game for good and bad. You know, if it's against us, so be it. If it's for us, give it. And that's all I'm after from any official, that, you know, they get those big decisions right. We all know that mistakes are going to be made, but let's make sure that those decisions are in the not so important ones, throwing in there half of the field that no one cares about.
Jacob.
Yeah, Gary, you know, you've mentioned multiple availabilities in the past about, you know, being familiar with one-off games, kind of the specific MLS Cup format, the first round being a lot like, you know, what you saw in the Leagues Cup. I guess I'm wondering how you see that play on the field. Like last Monday, was there anything that you could look at watching your team play, and was there anything you could look at, any moments where you thought of yourself, oh, you know, this seems like we've been here before?
I think there's a load of those situations that we all look at and have seen on more than one occasion now. I do honestly think, given the format this year alone, where you've got the best of three, the first game, I think for both teams, whilst there was an edge to it, I think everyone knows that there's a little bit of an insurance policy in the second game. It's not to say it's going to be easy, but you know that it's not, a final game or situation that you're in. This one is. So there's always going to be a slightly different feel to that. We've seen that before. We've been involved in it before. We've, I think, played to a very good level in games like this before, especially at home. And that's what I'm hoping for.
Tony?
Gary, it's as the two teams line up at kickoff tomorrow night, though, it's jeopardy for you, it's win or bust for you, it's not for them. Any thoughts on just how that could manifest itself in the game out on the field?
I think it's a really good question. I mean, having not been in this sort of best of three scenario before, of course I'm looking at it as I would have in Leagues Cup, and in obviously playoff games in previous seasons, or even at different clubs that I've been at. It's an interesting one. They'll know that job done, and they can wipe their brow and move on and get a good recovery. Job not done, and 5 days later they're going to be in a position that maybe they don't want to be in. I think it's a fine line, obviously, if I'm trying to look at it from the other side of the coin. Maybe there's more questions that are raised for them than there are for us. I know what we need, and of course that is a victory in one way, shape or form. Do they come out of the traps and really go for it and try and put themselves in a position as they did at home and started the game very well? Or is it more of a cautious approach and we've got 90 minutes to get this done, or penalties? Does that affect some of the decisions that Oscar makes in his team? Maybe so, but I do think at this point in time, most teams are looking and thinking, okay, what's the best team? Who's done it for me before? Let's not confuse this too much. Let's be clear and concise about what's got us into this position, and I do believe that will be the mindset of this Orlando group. They're in good form, they've got momentum, and there's no reason for me to believe that won't be the case tomorrow night. I think the job's a simple one if I see it from my angle, and we've seen a lot of them. We know what they're about, we know what they're capable of, we know where the dangers come from. There'll be very, very similar thoughts, I would think, in their camp as well.
We'll go to Ben Wright on Zoom for the last question.
Yeah, Gary, this is kind of similar to what Tony just asked, but in the past you've talked a good bit about how the difference between playing at home and on the road. And when you're at home, kind of the onus is on your team to be the proactive one. I'm curious, do you feel like that's going to be even more the case tomorrow, given Orlando's win in the first leg? And how do you feel about your team's ability to kind of dictate the game in a game of this magnitude?
Yeah, I mean, look, I would maybe, sort of compartmentalise it like this, Ben. We can't win the game inside 15 or 20 minutes, but we can go a long way to losing it for sure. So, the fine lines between commitment, the amount of attacking players on the field, getting the right balance, showing the right attitude, and for the players obviously to understand as well, which I know they do, that you want to start well, but you don't want to be in a position in those early exchanges where something's happened that's unnatural. You've let the occasion run away with you, and all of a sudden you're behind the eight ball, whether that's a goal, whether that's an early booking, whether that's a silly mistake. Those things I think in those early exchanges, if you get your mentality right, if you stick to what we know, and I do believe we've done well in the past. If you look at the last home game, for instance, against Orlando, we created a couple of excellent chances that in reality, we should have gone in front because of. Those moments and those fine lines, those details, those margins, as we've seen, are going to make all the difference. I believe at some point here, one of the set pieces is going to make a difference. Whether it's us or them, both penalty areas from dead balls are going to be, real big features for both teams. They look and have the bodies to get a job done and have shown that. I think we've not quite hit the sort of levels that we need to, and that's got to improve for us because it will be an important area. But pressure built, momentum built, the real sort of aggressive nature of this game, I think, will shine through for our team. And I'm hoping that'll be enough to tip us over the edge.
Yeah, really excited, obviously, about the game tomorrow. The objective for us is really clear now. We lost the first game, and now our backs are against the wall, and it's a must-win scenario from here on out. And I feel really good about where we're at in terms of our confidence. I feel really good about where we're at in terms of coming back home. And I think hosting our first ever playoff game at Geodis. It's a Tuesday night, late kickoff, and I just have a great feeling that the atmosphere is going to be one of the best that we've played in so far. So the energy's great amongst the group, and we're ready to go.
For mine, we'll just stick to one question each.
Dax, it seems like these two teams go on each other, and you can never tell really who's going to win. This is the way it's been all history. But in terms of tomorrow, because of your experience, that you play everywhere in these games and all those games, what makes Nashville a favorite?
Well, I think anytime we play at home at Geodis, I think we would consider ourselves, obviously, the team that's going to be the aggressor, the team that's going to be on the front foot. We always want to be the team that wins at home in front of our fans. But I think you said it in your statement, your question. It's a really evenly matched game between two good teams. And Orlando has been in some really good form coming into the second part of the season. I think they're probably the best team in the league, actually, on the road this year. I don't know if they're first, second, third in points on the road, but they're definitely up there. And so we've played them really tight. They've been tight games. And I think we've seen throughout the last couple of years, we've actually developed a pretty good organic little rivalry with Orlando. And that type of stuff happens on the field, right? I think the proximity to Cincinnati, the proximity to Atlanta, it's always fun to talk about. And the games between those two teams have been good and entertaining games. But I think the rivalry we're developing with Orlando is born out of playoff games. I think we knocked them out of the playoffs, was it 2 years ago? I can't remember if it was 2021. But these things are happening on the field, and that's what I think is really special about this game, is that we're frustrated with how the first game went, right? We're frustrated with how the game at the end of the regular season went. They came and beat us at home at Geodis, and so there's a lot of motivation internally to go and put that right and to make sure that this game goes to a third game. So I'm really excited about the prospect of winning in front of our fans at Geodis and taking this to a third game.
Dax, Orlando seem a team that they really like to get under your skin. How do you counter that? How do you go up against that?
Well, I think it's just having a little bit of composure when these games get a little bit crazy. We've seen in the last couple of games against Orlando, I think one of the things that they're very good at is a little bit of gamesmanship. And so, you could take that a bunch of different ways, right? And the way I look at it is if they get a lead, then they're the ones that are completely content to try to, take the sting out of the game, waste a little bit of time, make sure they're breaking up our momentum. Whenever we're trying to get things going quickly, they always seem to have a guy who is getting a little knock, right? Get the trainers to come out on the field. And it can be frustrating, for sure. And I haven't played in the last two games that we've played against Orlando, but it's definitely palpable on the sidelines when the temperature on the field is rising and we're getting more and more frustrated. we have to make sure that we keep our composure in those moments, because the onus is actually on us to make sure that, A, we don't go down a goal, and B, we find a way to get back in the game if that were to happen again.
Dax, obviously 2 years ago, you beat Orlando at Nissan in the playoffs end of the season. I guess, obviously, that was 2 seasons ago, but do you feel there's anything you can take away from that game as a group that would apply tomorrow night? Yeah,
I feel like at home, even if we go down a goal, because I'm pretty sure we went down a goal in that game and we came back to beat them 3-1, we're never out of it. And the games against them this year have proven that we're pretty close in terms of everything that, there's not a lot between the teams, if that makes sense. And so, obviously the game happened 2 years ago, but they still have a lot of the same players. I think the core of their team is still pretty similar. The core of our team is still pretty similar. So, those memories will be pretty fresh in our minds. But I look at this game as just a great opportunity, right? And a great opportunity for us to know that our backs are against the wall, that if we lose, our season's over. And that's good enough motivation in and of itself to go out and have a great performance and win the game, right? I don't think the opponent would matter. But the fact that it is Orlando, and the fact that I think the games between the two teams are always competitive and always fiery, I do think that adds a little bit more intrigue into this game.
So, with this being like the first game at Geodis Park, playing with a rival in its win goal, it's a lot. It could be a lot of pressure. So, how do you all kind of keep your all's composure during the game?
I mean, this is such a cliche, but I really like. This is one of the cliches that I really like. Pressure is a privilege, and I think that that's kind of the mantra that we have to take going into this game. And I think this team this year, we've been, I think, a little bit inconsistent, especially in the second half of the season with our results, with our performances. But when our backs have been against the wall, specifically in Leagues Cup, I think we've shown up and we've performed. And we know that we're going to have a great atmosphere. We know that we're going to have the crowd behind us. And we know that at home, we have no excuses. We have to go out and win the game. And so I think it's good to feel that pressure. That means that, you're alive. That means that you're excited about the game. It's just managing those emotions, making sure that, we don't let our emotions get the best of us in a big game. And I think if we can do that, we have a very good chance of getting this to a third game.
We'll go to Ben Wright on. Sorry, Tony, go ahead. Then we'll go to Ben Wright for the last question.
Just briefly, Dax, you've spoken before about the responsibility almost of this team to allow Hani Mukhtar to flourish and to be
right.
The best around you. And you talked about the second half of the season being a bit inconsistent. It kind of coincides with he's had a bit of a goal drought. How do you go about being in the best place to get Hani into the best place in this game tomorrow?
Well, I think a big key is going to be making sure that we find him a little bit higher up the field. And I think we've seen that Hani's such a good player. He can adapt to whatever the game is really calling for. In terms of, in the first game against Orlando, in the playoffs, the one we just lost, I think he came pretty deep to try to help us build out with possession, try to help us, maintain a little bit more of control of the game. And he can do that. He's more than capable. But I think that when we're at our best and when he's at his best, he's close to the goal. He's getting chances. He's testing the goalkeeper, which he did actually a few times. But for the most part, we need to make sure that we let him do his thing. And I don't think anyone's concerned about him not scoring as many goals as he has the last couple of months. I think that when the pressure's the highest, I think we've seen that he's going to step up and he's going to contribute and he's going to be a guy who steps up in the big moments. And so if we find him chances as a team, I have no doubt that he'll bury a couple of them.
Ben, last question.
Yeah, Dax, you mentioned kind of wanting to be the team that controls the game, especially when you're at home. I'm curious in this one, when you guys are facing elimination with a loss, how do you approach this game and wanting to come at it not from like a perspective of fear of being eliminated, but the perspective of wanting to go out there and play to your potential and kind of show that same form that we saw in Leagues Cup?
Yeah, Ben, it's a balance. I think it's a balance between not being too aggressive too early and opening ourselves up for a counterattack or a mistake that leads to a goal. But I definitely think that there needs to be mindset that we're going to be the aggressor early. And we're going to make sure that Orlando is under pressure. And we're going to make sure they don't have a lot of time on the ball. They don't have a lot of space to play into. We make sure they don't get into a rhythm and take our fans out of the game. We want to use the energy of our fans and our crowd and our home atmosphere, to really put them under a lot of pressure. And so it's just a balance, right? Making sure that in certain moments, if they're playing with a high line and trying to press us high, maybe we go a little bit more direct. Maybe we play in behind them a little bit more. And then when there are moments where they're dropping off us and sitting deeper, we have to be better with the ball. We have to make sure that we're creating chances and that we're being sharp in the final third, because we've had chances against them. The last 2 games we played against them, we've lost both games 1-0. We've looked at the video. We've tried to correct some mistakes that we've made, but also we know that we're going to find chances against this team. And so it's just a balance of us staying compact defensively, making sure we don't give up any early goals, and then also capitalizing on the chances that we do get, because I'm confident we will get some.